Welcome to AuthorTube News, where two authors find the latest publishing news so you don't have to.
I'm your co-host, Carrow Brown.
I'm your co-host, Tamara Woods. Welcome, everybody.
Man, we found some really good articles, I like to think anyway.
Is the tea hot?
Okay, well, it's okay. It's not like James Charles hot, but I like to think we found some good stuff.
Okay, maybe the tea is a little warm.
It's lukewarm and southern with lots of sugar in it.
Oh my gosh, don't get me started on sweet tea. Well, what story should we lead into for this week?
Oh, we got a couple different things in here. We've got that Readathon cancel article that we wanted to talk about. There's the surge in indie ebook sales. I've got a thing about review bots and this merge between, well, it's not a merge, but this partnership between Crunchyroll and Webtoons. I mean, we have all sorts of things here.
And then let's not forget about our AuthorTube shoutouts, where we tell y'all who's publishing soon, so you can, get ready.
Yeah, I feel kind of biased because I know both these people, so I'm like, we have to give them the special shout out, Tamara.
Well, even if we didn't know them, we'd still give them the special shout out.
Yep, and on that note, if you know somebody who is an independent author that would like to get a shout out on the show, please feel free to send them the link for that sign up. It's down in the video description below. Just send it to them, say, hey, put your stuff in here. But it needs to be a work that's coming out, not something that's already out.
Correct. And then we will shout them out to the best of our abilities.
Yep.
So I thought that we could start with the canceled Readathon.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that for sure.
So this Readathon was created by 7 booktubers, one of which is a woman of color. Her name is India, and her channel is called Life is a Page Turner. So in case you, my dear listeners, are unaware of how a book readathon goes on BookTube, generally speaking, there's questions, and you read a book that would go along with those questions. And all of the questions here are somehow related to quote unquote cancel culture. Cancel culture, the thing that comes up so very often.
Yeah, especially with that stuff that's going on with Blizzard right now. Like, they are legit getting canceled by fans, and it's hitting them in the wallet right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So with this one, there were 9 questions, and the whole readathon idea did not sit well with a lot of people. And it became kind of I wouldn't say like a huge topic of conversation, but it did have its moment in the Twitterverse. As it said in India's video, the goal of this readathon is to turn our cancel culture into positives, and will be going on from November 1st through 15th. Of course, it's now been canceled. And you were supposed to read at least 5 of the prompts, and you could use one book to answer more than one prompt if you wanted to. And so here's some of the questions. So you've been canceled. Read a book by an author that you dislike or that you don't normally read. Back in my day, people weren't so sensitive. Read a banned book. Shady subtweets. Read a book that was turned into a movie or TV show everyone hated. Canceling a friend. Read a friend's favorite book that you normally wouldn't like. And when I was looking at India's video, there was a lot of positivity in the comments itself. But when I went to Twitter, I found a thread from Marina's from the BookTube channel. My name is Marina's, and she is the co-founder of BookNet Fest, which has become an annual book festival basically for booktubers. And it's I feel like it's pretty well known in the community, at least.
It's definitely well known, but yeah, no, it is well known in BookTube because of the people who do review books. I do hear them mention it, like they've either gone or they know people that have gone, so it is a thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing, and it's very impressive to know that it's something that a few people from BookTube who saw that there was a need for it, because the bigger kind of book cons were not giving necessarily the place and the space for booktubers unless they had very large, substantial platforms. So they decided to strike out on their own. So she had said, it sits wrong with me, especially if we don't acknowledge that quote unquote cancel culture was born from Black Twitter. Being canceled meant that Black people, Black women especially, have exited the space. They are protecting themselves and their resources by withdrawing support. I think it's telling that we often center the conversation on how others react to harm rather than correcting harm, apologizing, moving on, and dealing with the fact that your mistakes might mean you may not be welcome into spaces you previously felt entitled to enter. India did not delete her video, but in a pinned comment, she said, "Unfortunately, we have had to cancel this readathon. It brought up some topics that some people in the community deemed harmful and an attack. I still want to leave up my video because this conversation brought up prompts 1, 2, 5, and 6. This was supposed to foster conversations, but instead the door was shut on it. I would like to continue this conversation in the comments, and if you would still like to participate, let me know. Maybe we can do a Discord for it." And those prompts are the ones that I read earlier, just in case you were wondering. So I wanted to pose some questions for people who are listening and for us to chat about. Was this making light of cancel culture? And is cancel culture inherently negative? Would it have been more acceptable if all participants were women of color? And do you think it would have been taken differently if it had a different name, like Banned Books Readathon, as opposed to cancel culture? So do you think this was making light of cancel culture?
I think, it's really hard to talk about cancel culture because, like, at the end of the day, if you broke down what cancel culture is, it's essentially bullying. I always keep going back to the Blood Air example, but I mean, we can take a look at, like, let's look at Blizzard, right? So, for those of you who are not huge gamers like I am, and I'm not trying to bring politics into this, but it's the recent example to use. Blizzard had a Hearthstone competition, which is like this virtual magic game. I know I'm speaking gibberish to some of you right now, but one of their players, who ended up winning, he in Mandarin basically said "Free Hong Kong" and a couple of other statements. And uh, the reaction that Blizzard had was to take away his winnings and to ban him from playing for a year. Um, and they came out with some statement saying it violated the TOS, but me and like thousands of other people went through the TOS, and there was nothing in there saying that he couldn't do that. And so what's happening right now is that Blizzard's target audience is banning them. They're canceling Blizzard right now. They're withdrawing their subscriptions. They are protesting. And one of the things that they're doing right now is they're actually taking one of the Overwatch characters and dressing them up like one of the Hong Kong protesters right now as a show of kind of, a subtle finger to Blizzard right now. But it's really cancel culture. It really depends if it's ultimately, I don't think it's a good thing, just because of the way it's done. You see a lot of cancel culture with the YA, but I like, and I'm probably going to get things thrown at me, but there's something about YA Twitter that kind of causes other individuals with similar mindsets to gravitate towards that, and that is kind of like just putting like fuel on the fire. And maybe it's because these individuals see that they can get away with a certain type of behavior if they're part of this group, and so it just kind of escalates and escalates and gets worse and worse and worse. Um, I guess at the end of the day, the question about cancel culture is, does it change anything in 5 years?
I'm going to have to softly disagree. I think that there is room for cancel culture in the sense that I think that there are books that absolutely misrepresent diverse figures and who rely solely on stereotypes to write about these minority figures so that they can fill the X's and Y's and check the boxes, and then now they're all good because they have a diverse character. I think that it is important for books that do misrepresent diverse figures to be called out. Cancel culture has kind of gone beyond that. And I think that people feel as though they're being attacked personally, where a lot of times the books are misguided. The books might not be well written, but the way the pile on kind of happens, it makes it feel incredibly aggressive and as though the author is being personally attacked instead of being their work being critiqued. And I think that's where I have a problem with the whole idea of cancel culture. I don't want people to be attacked for their work unless they are deliberately trying to be harmful. Missteps are going to happen, especially when we are trying to be more inclusive in our writing. And I wish that there was a little bit more room for nuance in order for that growth to occur. With that being said, I'm I'm still not sure if I felt, and maybe it's just me and my perspective, my age, etc. When I looked at the questions for quote unquote cancel readathon, I didn't feel like they were personally, I don't know, offensive, terrible. I understand not wanting to speak over people who have called out these books, and I understand not wanting to support them. I guess my problem is, would people reading these books somehow make the books less canceled if they're being talked about? And what does canceled actually mean? Because a lot of people, let's say, who've been quote unquote canceled, and I'm looking directly at the BeautyTube community, they're not actually canceled. They are still thriving. They're still doing their thing. They're still selling stuff. And I feel like that happens with these books too. Sometimes the books are pulled, but most of the time, the canceling of a book just gives it more of that negative press, like we talked about in episode 1.
Yeah, we talked about that in episode 1. And I agree with that just because I know people like who I interact with on a daily basis, and if somebody comes out and says I'm canceling this because of insert whatever reason, they're like, well, I don't actually respect this person's opinion, so if they don't like it, it has to be good. I'm gonna go get it. And so I think part of like again, I'm circling back to cancel culture. Cancel culture kind of works in two ways because people are wanting to come out and say that this thing is bad, it's not right, and all that. But inadvertently, what some of they're doing is just like bad, like just like 1-star reviews for books. What they're doing when they're talking about what they don't like about the book is they're also talking about what somebody else may like about a book. So, like let's use romance or erotica for example. So let's say somebody comes in and they write a 1-star review. It's like there's a lot of sex in this book and it's really graphic, and I wanted some plot and blah 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 blah. That book's not good for them, but somebody who wants the sex and the lack of plot are gonna be like, I'm in, right? So they're the cancel culture is still giving publicity to the things that they don't want to thrive. I mean, going back to Blood Air, Blood Air's got over 300 reviews right now. Book's not even published yet. You know she's gonna make bank when that book comes out.
Oh, definitely. And it might not have gotten this whole spotlight that it did without the cancel culture phenomenon happening with it.
Yeah. And that's why earlier I said, does this change anything in 5 years? Because a lot of people who want to engage in cancel culture they're getting like that immediate reaction. That's like, I did the thing, people don't like it now, da 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 da. But then you see some of the beauty tubers who are kind of like in that moment, yeah, they're canceled, but like a year later, like freaking Jeffree Star owns like 15 Lamborghinis. He's doing fine. And people try to cancel him weekly.
Yeah, of course, when we look at in terms of books, it's a smaller, it's on a much smaller scale, and I do wonder how.
Okay, so moving away from the beauty community, we will look at books and the canceled books that people tried to cancel and ended up thriving. Harry Potter, the very first book, a bunch of moms got together and tried to cancel that book because it had witchcraft in it, and now look at where it is right now.
Fair point.
That's actually why I started reading Harry Potter, because there was this woman who basically said you can't read that book, it's got witchcraft. And me being the age I was at this time, so you told me I can't do something. Guess what I'm gonna go do? I'm gonna go rent it from the library.
So what do y'all think? Do you think that cancel culture actually works? Do you think that it's a negative? Do you think it's a positive? I really want to know. I'm really interested in what you have to say and what you think. This is one of those conversations that we could drag on for days, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, and I agree, and I'm pretty confident that there are actually studies being done about the nature of cancel culture. Like, I probably should just be able to go look it up later, and I will, but this is not the time, ladies and gentlemen. We should just do a cancel culture episode sometime in the future.
Well, I am positive that cancel culture will come up again.
Yes.
Because it is a never-ending cycle.
It's part of our society right now. But moving on.
I wanted to give a brief shout out for authors who have diverse voices and are looking for a Twitter pitch contest. There's hashtag DVpit, and this is for creators who are marginalized. They could pitch work which includes marginalized identities or not, but the author has to be quote unquote marginalized. The next DVpit takes place on October 28th, and that's for children's and teen fiction and nonfiction. And then on October 29th is for adult fiction, nonfiction, and artists and illustrators. So if you are a minority, you identify with a marginalized identity, et cetera, here's some opportunities for you to potentially find an agent.
We did try to actually find their exact wording about what being a part of a marginalized group is, but it just says marginalized group. So if you guys are curious, that's all we know. That's all we could find on it.
And of course, we'll leave the link for this and everything else that we're talking about down in the notes.
Yep.
What do you feel like talking about? Are you excited?
You know what? I came across an article that got my blood boiling a little bit, and it's about bots in book reviews.
So, bots and book reviews. Tell me more.
Yeah, I know, right? So everybody knows that there are bots of some shape or form in anything that's involved in entertainment, whether it be movies, books, whatever. So I came across an article that was called Amazon Reviews Have a Bot Problem, and this is not new. This has been around for a couple of years. I mean, this article was originally written back in 2017, and the big reason that I ended up like paying attention to this is because when I start to go and look for products right now, whether it be like, books or a new movie that I want to watch, I do what everybody else does, and I go and, well, not everybody else. I'm sure there's one of you that's looking at me going, "Not to me, Carol. I am different." But I always go and I check out the reviews because my money is precious. I don't make a lot of it. Hi, I'm an author and I'm broke. So when I spend my money, I have to make sure it's going to be something that has some kind of equal or greater return, in my opinion. So I always check the reviews. And when I look at reviews on Goodreads and I look at reviews on Amazon, I have been able to pick up telltale signs that these are bots. And it's gotten to the point where it's ridiculous. It's notorious on Goodreads. One of the big key things that I usually do is, like, if I see a very generic like review of like, "Great book, I really liked it, and the plot involving this main character was very intriguing. Give it 5 stars. You should read it today." I always click on that person's profile, and if that's the only book that they reviewed, that tells me a lot about that author. And it's just, in my opinion, it's getting worse. Like, Amazon is actually going through a process right now where they are going after websites like Amazon Verified Reviews and BuyAmazonReviews.info. They're going after those sites. They're taking them down because of the effect that those reviews have on a product. So if somebody's trying to sell you something shady and they buy 50 reviews that say it's amazing, you're going to buy it thinking it's amazing, and you get it and it's shady. And you may not be able to get that money back.
What I find really interesting about this is that these bot farms, for lack of better terms, they will not just target like the book that they are trying to pump up. They'll do it to other authors too who aren't necessarily in on it. And then once that bot is found out and Amazon starts cracking down and taking away those reviews, then the authors who had nothing to do with it are also affected. So really, it affects everyone in the community, whether or not you're participating in it.
Yeah, and part of the reason it's getting a lot more attention, besides individuals like me, is Rotten Tomatoes. It's the movies that are coming out. Like there's a podcast that I listen to called Clownfish, and Clownfish will talk about anything that involves comics or books or media or anything like that. And I really respect what they have to say on a lot of different things. And they were talking about how Maleficent came out and it bombed. And I remember when they mentioned it, I was like, I didn't even know this movie was coming out. Like, this movie was coming out. And if you go look at the reviews for it, the reviews say it's an amazing movie, but it's if you go look at at the report for its sales, it's not doing very good because nobody's going to see it.
Right.
And they actually were going through on their podcast, because what they do is different than what we do, where they actually share a screen. And so they're going through the screen and clicking on all the different people and seeing that they were all just generic profiles put in to like build up this movie.
What?
Yeah, they did it. They even found one that just said "great movie" as the username.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Please be more obvious. Thank you.
Yeah. And it's just and I get that businesses are trying to make sure that they get sales, so they go in and they do tactics like this, but I don't think what a lot of industries are realizing, and I'm saying this about publishing too because they're just as notorious for doing this, is that their clients are not dumb. Like they're really not. Like let's go back in time. Let's say back in February. Let's go back to February, maybe March, when the whole thing involving this lady from Brazil was basically copying and pasting other romance novels together to make her Frankenstein novels. Do you remember that?
Oh, how could I forget?
It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And guess who it was that found out about the whole thing going down? Do you think it was a lawyer? Was it the author? Was it a publisher? No, it was a reader.
Readers.
A reader, a fan, people who digest this stuff are going to be really quick to pick these things up. And let me tell you, I'm afraid of the romance community because when they get together to combat something, it is scary. They
Romance Landia, it's not romantic. They ain't no joke.
yeah,
Don't play with these people.
they are passionate about their works. I respect that, but these people literally got together and got like their copies of this Frankenstein lady's books, and they went through and did the hours of research to cut and paste which passages they had taken it from whatever authors.
The amount of work, y'all, if you weren't paying attention to this when it was going down, the amount of work that actually went into doing this was really astounding.
It was,
Like,
yeah.
and rightly so. They love their authors. They love the books that they write and they produce, and they were angry that this person was coming through and just blatantly ripping off very well-known authors. I remember, wasn't Courtney Milan one of them?
Courtney Milan was the one that blew it on Twitter because she was the one that was starting the initial Twitter thread, and then the person who actually did something about it was Nora Roberts.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, because nobody else had the money to go internationally and sue this person, and so Nora was like, I have money, watch me go.
And the thing is, I mean, Nora Roberts is one of the biggest authors in all the land, and you're plagiarizing her. And I remember that she'd written a blog post about it. Maybe she talked about how she has been plagiarized many times before, and most of the time she doesn't take it up because it's just that much money, that much effort. But this particular time, it was so outrageous and so massive, and this woman was making a really good living on everyone else's backs, that's what prompted Nora into actually doing something this time.
Yeah, this woman, yeah, and then to add fuel to the fire, this Frankenstein lady, that's her name now, Frankenstein lady, she first off, she plagiarized off Nora twice, like like not just one book, she plagiarized 2 books, just adding fuel to the fire there. So, and then she turned around, she was like, well, it's not my fault, I hired a ghostwriter, and as somebody who does ghostwriting, F you, seriously.
Such a mess. That was a mess.
But the whole point I was trying to make with that is that you've got these people that are thinking that they can pull the wool over the eyes of their potential buyers, and I'm here to tell you that you are wrong. You are wrong. You cannot fool these people. They are getting smarter, they understand you better, and they're paying a lot more attention to language in reviews right now. Like I could find any book review that's out right now, and you and I could go through it, and you and I could probably figure out which one are the generic, like I'm doing this because I was told to, and the ones that actually read the book.
Right. Freaking bots.
I know. So don't use bots. Like, and another reason I want to say that is because I know that there's a very popular indie author on YouTube that used bots on one of their books, and I was just like, you are kidding. And they got found out about it, and it's been talked about before. I'm not going to say their name, but I don't like this person.
All right, I'm not going to do it, but I really want to.
I'll tell you when we're done.
On that note,
talking about money.
Did you know that self-publishing grew 40% in 2018?
I knew it was growing. I didn't know how much it was growing by.
So from 2013 to 2018, self-publishing has grown 40%, according to a study done by Bowker. And if y'all are unaware, that is a agency where you can buy your ISBN numbers. So it's like the number on the back of your book that's a code and lets people know, this book is this code. And it looks like more people are wanting to self-publish, and people want that control. And there's a lot more hybrid authors. It's like you, Kara.
Yeah, I'm a hybrid author. But usually hybrid authors, what they'll do is they'll get their established fan base from traditional publishing, and then they'll go hybrid because they can make more money. I just decided to do it backwards because why not?
I throw caution to the wind. I do what I want.
Yes, it's my life.
I have one published book through a small publisher, but I don't consider myself a hybrid. Most of my stuff is self-published, so that's why I just go with the indie self-published name. I found this interesting because while this is happening, while we have this surge in self-publishing and this kind of growth, there's still some issues with indie authors trying to get their books into libraries.
Indie authors do struggle to actually get their books in the libraries just because it comes down to space. Like, they don't just grow more bookshelves like off the shelf whenever they do. In fact, once a year, most libraries will actually do like a little purge to get rid of the books that aren't checked out very often to make room for other books. So getting in the library can be difficult, and something that I would definitely encourage indie authors to do is to kind of reach out to their library and see when they have a local author event. Like, I have one in my area coming November, and I filled out the form to show up, and basically I get to be there, I get to talk at a conference, and then I have to bring like 2 copies of my book to donate to the library. But I mean, I'm not making any money off that, but at the same time, my book's in a library and somebody else will read it, hopefully. Getting there is hard. Like, if you just walk into a library and say, these are my books and I am a local author, you may find that your books may just stay there on the counter. It's hard to say.
And even with ebooks, even though they don't take physical space, they do take money. Mm-hmm. And libraries are notorious for not having a lot of funding. And even when there's an economic downturn where more people are going to libraries to get their books, there's not necessarily a push in having more money available in the libraries to buy these books. So one of the ways that is definitely will help you as an indie to get your book into a library, even if it's an ebook, is having people request that book. And in the US, Overdrive is the most used lending option for ebooks. One thing to note, starting November 1st, library systems are only going to be allowed to purchase 1 copy of ebooks from Macmillan, their new titles. So there's going to be like an 8-week waiting time from the initial release before libraries can buy more copies. I don't know if you've been on waiting lists for books from libraries, but even when they buy 20, 30, 40 copies of very big anticipated books, you're waiting for a long time to get those books. So there's been a lot of kind of pushback with that from librarians because they're saying that this is going to make it more difficult for people who are elderly and getting books from the library, or sick kids who are reading library books, and etc. Macmillan is saying that they are wanting people to get a little frustrated with waiting for the books so that they'll be more likely to go and buy a copy. And I personally think that that might not actually work, because it might be that people who are using the library can't afford to buy those books. And that's why they'll go to the library and be willing to wait on a waiting list for weeks on end.
Yeah, just not to be TMI with the listeners here, but there was a period in my life where I actually lived in a tent. I mean, I didn't have any money. I wasn't doing, it was not good times in Carrow's life. But I was able to go to the library, and I was able to kind of escape my situation by reading. And reading, it's not to be underestimated for what it can give to people. And I was more than happy to wait on a book for 3 weeks if I had to. I would just go find some other book and read that until my book came in. The way that libraries are treated right now is actually really sad. And I don't know about in your area, Tamara, but a lot of the libraries in my particular part of America actually provide shelter to homeless people right now. And if you,
oh, wow.
Yeah, and if you think about how hot it gets here in Arizona, which it can get up to, and it has gotten up to 130 degrees. Yeah, people who live on the street, they need somewhere to go, and so libraries open the door. Now, they can't stay there all night, but they can at least get away from, the noonday sun, have a respite from that.
When I worked in the public library system when I was living in West Virginia, a lot of times the people who were there during the daytime were in fact people who were homeless, and that was like a place where they could get out of the cold, they could do job hunting, they can work on their resume, where they could get resources. Libraries are a huge tool in the community, and I feel like personally that they aren't respected as much as they should be. That being said, so there's Indie Author Project, or IAP, and it is a publishing community that includes public libraries, authors, curators, and readers working together to connect library patrons with indie published books. So IAP has helped hundreds of libraries engage their local creative community, and they have assisted in getting more than 12,000 indie published books into local libraries. So they kind of create a curated list of books to present to libraries. And if I'm not mistaken, they allow libraries to kind of showcase those books for a year, I think it is. And it's at this time, it's a pretty small list. I think there's maybe 50 books for the year, but I could be wrong. And I think that their enrollment period ended October 1st for libraries. So my thought process in all of this is that because there's going to be this bigger wait for books, there might be more of a there might be a little bit of a window opening for indie authors to be able to get their books in the libraries. But what's going to help is, of course, having that professional cover, having your metadata together. You need that community support. You need your readers to request your books.
Yeah, that will do it every time. Like out here in Mesa, Arizona, we had an author. His name's Kevin Hearne. He's very well known right now, but at the time when his books came out, he was very small. Like you couldn't find him anywhere. I literally walked into a Barnes and Noble and couldn't find his book. And when I went to a lady saying, "Hey, I'm just trying to find this book," and she's like, "Well, why would we have his book here?" And I was like, "He's a local author. How about that for one?" And enough people started going to Barnes and Noble saying, "Where's Kevin's book at?" And next thing you know, like Kevin almost has a whole shelf to himself right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so so if you get people to talk about your book and request your book, it will go to places.
How does one find a reader? Maybe we'll talk about it in the next podcast.
See, talking about the importance of libraries and all that stuff, my actual next article has to do with the fact that bookstore sales are down 10% as of August.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I was
ouch.
Yeah, so Carrow likes to go through data and read data and cross-compare it to other things. And I was going through the Census Bureau reports for 2019 for bookstores because, I've got nothing else to do. And one of the things that they noticed is that at the start of the year, the sales for books dropped by 6% from its previous year, and then it continued to decline. And as of August, it's declined a total of 10%. You think about the thousands on thousands of dollars that represents, it's kind of staggering. And the thing that kind of blew me away a little bit is that there was a decline in books in August, which is kind of school month, which is when all the kids should be getting their books and getting ready to go to school, and then you got the college stuff and all that. And even all that still had a decline because a lot of people are switching away from the actual physical copy of books in that regard and switching to the Kindle version because as somebody who had to lug around 6 textbooks around college, I can understand the need for that.
And sometimes it's cheaper.
Yeah.
Not all the time, because school books are crazy.
Yeah, and then they come out with new editions, and you can just get 2 editions before it, and nothing's changed but the prefix. Yeah, that's not helping them either.
I am glad that I don't have to do that anymore. Sorry, Carol.
It's okay.
To the question at hand, that's very interesting. Barnes and Noble has been such an interesting case to me because they always seem like they're on the brink of doom, but they somehow managed to pull it out. And I'm wondering what their sales are looking like. I wish I would have looked that up before we started this.
I know every time that they're not doing very well, they start to change the way the store works. So, for example, like when it wasn't doing very well before, suddenly Starbucks is in a whole bunch of Barnes and Noble, and things kind of like taper off because people are going there buying books, drinking coffee or tea, and reading their book in the space. And then they started to go down again, and then next thing you know, they're selling like nerd toys. Not saying anything bad about nerds. I'm a nerd too, but they started selling nerd toys and little figures. And if you go in there now, it's turning more and more into kind of like a booktuber prop store, stuff to put on your shelves when you're recording yourself talking about books and things like that. It's got little dolls, it's got little fuzzies, like little cute sayings, like that's what I've noticed in the last 5 years, but I don't know if that's your observation as well.
Well, I think that it's smart to try to change things up for your customer base as they are changing. I think it's a smart idea, and it sounds like they're actually paying attention to what consumers want.
I'm surprised they can still sell music in there. They've got CDs in there, and I was like, I thought you guys stopped making these.
Yeah, right? Do people buy CDs anymore? Let us know. Do you still buy CDs? But it looks like their sales were still down last year, looking at the Business Wire.
That'd be an interesting conversation to not have right now about ways to save Barnes and Noble. But let's move on to another article. I actually wanted to talk about something that admittedly affects me a little bit more than it does Tamara, but if you are a independent comic creator who happens to be on Webtoons, this is going to affect you too. Crunchyroll, who it's kind of like the anime Netflix. They have a whole bunch of anime that's in Japanese, and they've been, hosting a lot of different shows that you really can't find anywhere else. And I'm very much into that stuff, so I watch a lot of it, not paid or advertised. There's no code for me. Sorry, guys. Yeah, man.
Lol.
If you totally want to sponsor me, though, Crunchyroll, I'm all in. Anyway, moving on. And they announced that they're going to do a partnership with Webtoons. Now, Webtoons does affect me because that is an independent comic place where if you do a web comic of any sort, you can post it on Webtoons and hopefully will get noticed. They made this site years ago with basically trying to host all the web comics in one place. Before that was a thing, what would happen is that you would have like hub sites that would give you links to all the different places, and it was a little chaotic to try and find a web comic. And right now, as it stands, I'm actually a little nervous about this partnership because one of the things that makes me a little shifty in my seat is the fact that on Webtoons, which was originally supposed to be an independent creator site, they've had a lot of people from established comic publishers come in, and I'm not talking like the small fry. I'm talking like DC and Marvel and Top Cow have been posting their stuff on Webtoons. And
Really? I didn't know that.
yeah, no, they came in. They've gotten their stuff published on there. They get the featured thing. They also get showed in the newsletter that comes out occasionally, and I'm admittedly salty about that because this was supposed to be an independent site, and then you get the bigwigs that come in, and then the money that was supposed to be divvied out to the creators starts to go down, and the numbers go up because now there's more traction on the site. And I could rant on about this, but now that I see that there's this partnership with Crunchyroll, it makes me even more nervous because I'm like, well, like, are you when you because on the announcement they say that we are excited to be partnering with Webtoons and that Webtoons has a huge catalog of content creators that resonate deeply with our audience, and we can't think of a better way to delight fans than by bringing these stories to life through animation. So at first I'm like, that's really cool if it's the independent people, but if this is just finding other ways to work with the bigger publishers, I'm going to be a super salty cracker in my part of America. Like there's so many good independent stories on there, and they all deserve, in my opinion, to get the spotlight. But when you have like these bigger publishers who, in my opinion, Webtoons, in my opinion, don't come after me or my business, please. In my opinion, letting these big publishers come in because they threw some money at you makes me really sad. It's kind of like going back against what they initially wanted to do. And they had to reach out to a lot of different comic people and say, hey, come put your stuff on our site. Hey, come put your stuff on our site. So these people went from hosting it on their own personal sites where they had attention and traction and brought all the audience to Webtoon.
That kind of makes me think, putting this in like AuthorTube kind of lens, it makes me think about like YouTube and how it began as this content creation platform that was very much independent, and then we look and see that there's so much of celebrities and big companies that are kind of taking up a lot of space on this platform that was originally just for people who were making content for other people, just regular average Joes. So I can identify with what you're saying, basically, is what I'm saying.
You know, I'm so
And
happy that you said that because you literally triggered something I wanted to talk about earlier in regards to BookTube. Did you know that YouTube started a series called BookTube? They started a series called BookTube where they have these three ladies talking about books. I wonder who's been doing that a little bit longer.
What?
Yes, they did that.
No. Okay, can
It's a thing.
I've got feelings. Have they talked? I mean, are they going to be showcasing actual booktubers who've been out here on these internet streets talking about books for literal years?
I have no idea. All I know is that they got an adult book and then they got YA book readers to come in and talk about the book. Like, that's not the target audience at all.
And they don't even know how to do it right.
No.
Oh,
So-
YouTube disappoints me every single day.
YouTube-
I was like, oh my God.
YouTube came in on something that they thought was good and they wanted to try it. But in all honesty, you could have just talked to the BookTube community and been like, hey, we're thinking about doing this thing. Who wants in? You know that everybody in BookTube would have been like, me, I'm right here. Let's do this.
Oh, wow. BookTube official trailer. BookTube is the monthly book club meeting that every reader and author wishes they were invited to join. Each episode of this YouTube original series features a small, quote unquote, book club, which consists of one of the world's best selling authors, a moderator, and 3 top creators having an engaging and intelligent conversation about the author's latest book. BookTube streaming free October 17th. Oh boy. It looks like in the comments that there is at least some people know who they are, but not everybody does. Well, hopefully they'll be going into the actual BookTube community and breaking out booktubers to be a part of this. And if that's the case, cool. If they're finding people who don't really have anything to do with the community and putting them on a platform, kind of like what they did with Michelle Obama was interviewed, and they didn't really target Black booktubers. So
oh yeah, that was so stupid. Why would you have that book and not have Black booktubers on the panel? Who thought of that? Seriously.
that was and that was a serious, I feel like that was a serious blow to BookTube as a community. I felt like people felt very unseen and unheard when that happened. So I hope that this isn't the same kind of situation.
I will bet you one fan that it is.
No. Okay, I'm not looking at this anymore. I feel like I'm going to be frustrated. So,
Now, I didn't mean to spring that on you last minute, but when you were talking about Booktuber things earlier, I was like, oh, wait, hold on. We've had an injustice happen to Booktube. And I know that this is AuthorTube news, but Booktube is like our sister.
and besides, without booktubers reading, AuthorTubers, what are we writing? Like, we need readers. Read my book. Please read my book.
Please read my book too. Please love me.
Love me. Speaking of love, let's give a shout out.
Yes, let's do the shout out for the book.
Oh dear.
Okay, so the first one that I want to go ahead and do a shout out for is going to be M.K. Williams. M.K. Williams has a book coming out called The Infinite. It is a sci-fi adventure. It's got multiverse, some alternate history. I'm intrigued already. It's going to be available in Amazon, Barnes & Noble, rest in peace, at iBooks, Google. It says everywhere great books are sold. I also have an option if people want to order signed copies and pre-order as well. It is the same cost at the end of the user and more fun for me as the author to get to sign the packaged books. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so she's got a form for that. So I'll throw that in. That's going to be in the comments down below too. So if you guys want to hit her up on that or them up on that, go for it.
And our second shout out of the day is A.L. Williams. Clifford Williams. And he will be releasing Immortal Scars. It's book 1 of the Scars series, and it's an LGBTQ plus paranormal romance. That's coming out November 14th. It's going to be available on Amazon. And the tagline is two scars and one chance.
Oh, that's
Sounds
nice.
really cool. And the paperback will be available release day, and Immortal Scars will be available in Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah, I totally forgot to read MK's tagline, which is smashing the patriarchy across the universe.
Loves it.
Oh,
Loves it.
yes.
But we need y'all to give us more. Tell us when you're releasing these books. Let us know. As soon as you know when it's going to be released, hit up our form that's down there. Fill it out. Let us know because we want to shout you out because your books are important and we want to let the people know.
Yeah, and if you have a friend that has a book coming out too, like that, just, send the link to them too. I mean, the whole reason we want to do this is to help get you traction and basically tell people that you have something coming out. So, all right, but that's pretty much all that we have to talk about today. I had a great time. I definitely enjoyed the talking points that we had today, and I am really curious about what the viewers or our listeners have to say about these topics as well. I'll post some of the questions down in a pinned comment below, just so that because that way you don't have to listen to the whole thing again. But share your thoughts on this. Feel free to also like that video and share it and tell other people about it because we can't grow without you. Did that sound good? I tried really hard.
I mean, that was great.
Thanks.
10 out of 10 would recommend.
Thank you.
And of course, since we're here trying to report this news and things that we think might be interesting to you, if something comes up and you want to tell us about it, you can reach out to us either on Twitter or you can hit us up on our email, and those links will be in the description also.
But that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you so much for stopping by and listening to what we have to say, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Bye, y'all.